Right now, everyone's looking for leaders who can handle chaos without melting down, who won't panic when the systems fail. Turns out, we've been ignoring them this whole time. Because while everyone was protecting younger generations from discomfort, and older generations were clinging to outdated systems, Gen X was being trained for exactly this moment. The world is having a collective anxiety attack, and Gen X is just fine. Check the numbers from the American Psychological Association in 2023. 62% of Gen Z and millennials report overwhelming anxiety, record highs across the board. Meanwhile, Gen X has the lowest anxiety scores despite being the sandwich generation caring for aging parents while supporting adult children. Here's what's happening in their brains. When you grow up with constant existential threats, the amygdala, that's your brain's threat detection system, it learns to calibrate differently. The doomsday clock showed 3 minutes to midnight their entire childhood. Civil defense PSAs explained exactly what nuclear war would look like. The AIDS epidemic meant a diagnosis was a death sentence until 1996. Small doses of uncontrollable danger throughout development taught their brains to distinguish between actual emergency and background noise. Psychologists call this stress inoculation, like a vaccine for emotions. Everyone else is beta testing anxiety. Gen X is running version 35.0, fully debugged. They can actually tell when someone's lying to them. And in 2026, that's basically a superpower. Deepfakes indistinguishable from reality. Algorithmic manipulation designed to hijack your attention. The average person sees over 6,000 persuasion attempts daily. But Pew Research in 2023 found Gen X is most likely to fact-check before sharing. 63% verify sources compared to 41% of Gen Z. Here's why that matters neurologically. Gen X got a dual education. Peak advertising saturation in the 80s taught their brains to recognize persuasion patterns. Simultaneously, they absorbed counterculture skepticism. This created what cognitive scientists call metacognition, the ability to think about your own thinking. They can watch themselves being persuaded and catch it happening. In corporate meetings, they're the ones asking, okay, but who's actually paying for this? What's the real ROI? While everyone else nods along to buzzword salad. I mean, if corporate jargon was an Olympic sport, Gen X would be the drug testers. When systems crash, they don't look for tech support. They become tech support. Gen X is the only generation that laid down neural pathways in an analog world, then rewired those same pathways for digital. Brain plasticity research shows that learning fundamentally different systems for the same task creates cognitive flexibility that people who only learned one system never develop. Information had a physical cost in the analog era. Your brain encoded it differently because effort creates deeper memory consolidation. But they're also the ones who built the internet infrastructure everyone else just uses. As of 2024, they hold 51% of leadership positions in Fortune 500 companies, despite being the smallest generation. When the server crashes, their brain doesn't panic and search for external rescue. It shifts into diagnostic mode. Automatically, they've pivoted through the dot-com boom, the dot-com bust, the 2008 financial crisis, the pandemic, and now AI disruption. This is just Tuesday. They've been self-managing since childhood, and you can see it in brain scans. By 1984, 7 million children between ages 5 and 13 were regularly unsupervised after school. The prefrontal cortex, that's your brain's CEO, normally doesn't fully develop until your mid-20s. But when you're forced to make executive decisions daily starting at age 7, that system activates early and repeatedly. University of Colorado research in 2019 found adults who had regular unsupervised time as children showed 35% higher executive function scores. That empty house after school was a daily executive function workout. When crisis hits, they don't freeze in analysis paralysis. Their brain's already running scenarios and executing solutions. And here's where it gets interesting for today's workplace battles. They care about results, not performance. Gen X invented "work smarter, not harder" before it became a LinkedIn hashtag. They hate performative culture. They hate meetings that could have been emails. Why? Because they watched their parents give everything to companies that handed out pink slips when quarterly earnings dipped. So they never believed in company loyalty, but they're fiercely loyal to their own competence. They can't control whether they'll get laid off, but they can control whether they're the most valuable person in the room when it happens. They didn't grow up with participation trophies. If you didn't win, you lost, and you accepted it. This created adults with very low need for external validation. They don't need a boss hovering to stay productive. They don't need constant praise to know they did good work. They just deliver and move on. In an era of quiet quitting debates and return to office mandates and performative hustle culture, that's the kind of employee every company is desperately trying to find. They've been that employee since 1995. They can actually sit with discomfort, and nobody else seems to know how to do that anymore. And Gen X spent 15 to 20 hours weekly in understimulated boredom as kids. When external stimulation drops near zero, your brain's default mode network activates. This neural network only turns on when you're not focused on external tasks. It's responsible for creativity, self-reflection, future planning. Stanford research in 2021 found people who experienced regular childhood boredom showed 28% higher creative problem-solving scores and were 3 times more likely to start businesses because boredom taught their brains to generate internal content, to create meaning from nothing. Modern brains get 7+ hours of screen time daily. The moment understimulation hits, device appears. Result? Default mode network barely activates. Gen X can do deep work, sit in silence, focus for hours without dopamine hits, handle uncertainty without immediate answers. They're simultaneously the most independent and the most collaborative people in the room. Research in the Journal of Adult Development shows Gen X reports the lowest levels of seeking social support during stress. Their brain learned early that survival depends on self-sufficiency. But if you need help, they show up without drama, no social media documentation, just quiet competence. Born between boomers and millennials, they can code switch between generational values. Studies show multi-generational teams with Gen X leadership score 27% higher on performance metrics. They hold institutional knowledge while implementing digital transformation. They're cultural translators. Bridges don't get parades. They just hold things together while everyone walks across them. The world is finally catching up to what Gen X has been all along. Not loud, not performing, not waiting for recognition. Just quietly competent. Skeptical enough to avoid obvious traps, autonomous enough to act without permission, stable enough to handle chaos, focused on results while everyone else argues about optics. They're not over the hill. They're the ones keeping everything from falling apart while everyone else is either panicking or posting about panicking. And they're completely fine with you not noticing. If this resonated with you, please subscribe. Drop a comment below if you're Gen X or if you work with them.